The ways in which we do and should look at poverty may not look the same. We are here to propose how we believe poverty should be defined and measured. We define poverty as not only a lack of certain resources, but also a lack of ability to use these resources in order to maintain a quality of life that honors dignity. Our definition encompasses thinking from multiple national poverty measurements in the capabilities framework, looking not just at what resources one has, but what they can do with those resources. One of the approaches influencing our definition and measurement of poverty is Robert Richter's stance on what poverty truly looks like. Robert Richter argues that a person in poverty as defined by the Census Bureau holds a standard of living much higher than what is depicted by activists and media. He notes that the Census Bureau's main focus lies on the money income of households, ignoring any of the 70-plus welfare programs that may be viable options for families. Richter includes a quote to strengthen the idea that poverty may be depicted inaccurately to the public, leading us to believe poverty looks entirely different than what it is, stating, "The walls are old doors, tar paper, chicken wire, and rotting boards. The ground provides a dirt floor. There is no bathroom, no running water, no electricity, no heat. Their toilet is reeking outhouse across the street." In including this, Richter argues that these conditions are not at all representative of the 37 million individuals said to be poor by the census. Richter depicts a more accurate picture of what he believes poverty to look like with the quote about how the typical household defined as poor by the government had a car, air conditioning, and a TV, among a number of other amenities. While both of these families may be impoverished on paper, Richter alludes to the idea that there may be stark differences in the way poverty is represented, and this is a clear example of how. When looking at household amenities, Richter argues that living conditions can be represented by the number of amenities a household owns. Based on a scale of 1 to 30 items, the median household in poverty has 14 amenities, while the median household for all households has 19. By doing this, Richter may be suggesting that because half of all poor households have at least 14 amenities, including air conditioning, washer, and dryer, that a common interpretation of poverty is not as accurate as we may believe. We disagree with this argument, and that while the idea of owning these amenities may imply an increased quality of life, many of these households may have acquired their amenities for free, as gifts, or they may be renters. And if they did purchase their amenities, what if they lack the resources to pay or use their amenities, are now in debt, or live in an unsafe environment where they are unable to afford healthcare or other expenses? Nussbaum takes an entirely different approach to measuring poverty with the Central Capabilities Measure, which defines poverty as a lack of resources and capabilities necessary for a dignified human life, and puts an emphasis on what an individual is able to do and be. We understand that different individuals require different qualities to satisfy well-being, making the capabilities approach particularly difficult to measure. Not only will they require more or less qualities than the next, but each individual may have a different threshold for how much of one capability they consider to satisfy as minimally decent. Despite this, we support this approach as an individual proxy to keep in mind when measuring one's quality of life and assessment of poverty. The OPM and SPM should be considered when measuring poverty. The Census Bureau defines the OPM as a measure of poverty using a gross annual pre-tax income threshold of 3 times the cost of a thrifty food basket, under the assumption that families spend a third of their money on food. Despite accounting for inflation, we believe the OPM is an outdated measure as it fails to account for geographic variation, standard of living, the possibility of non-annual jobs, and the money that it would be unavailable to the individual after taxes. The SPM, an extension of the OPM, measures poverty by taking cash income, government benefits, non-cash benefits, and tax credits, then subtracts non-discretionary resources such as taxes. While the SPM does take into account cohabitating families, geographic variations in cost of resources, and tax credits, all while including benefits, we believe the measure is flawed, and that counting government benefits into the income of an individual or family does not necessarily mean they are no longer under the poverty line, a topic we will discuss further when we look into our proposed measure. For this reason, we propose the most effective way to measure poverty as a combination of the SPM, education, health, the FCSU, and all of these while keeping capabilities in mind.
Our measurement of poverty is based on our definition, which considers both resources and capabilities. Money and basic needs, which are food, clothing, shelter, and utilities, or FCSU, are crucial resources for individuals. We aim to measure these alongside capabilities, as it's essential to understand not only what resources someone has and can access, but also their ability to utilize them. Our measurement of poverty involves assessing a household's income, which provides a solid foundation for establishing one's resources. Similar to the SPM, we will evaluate income after subtracting non-discretionary expenses. However, our income assessment will only include cash government benefits and will not account for non-cash benefits like SNAP or WIC. While these programs are incredibly beneficial to recipients, including them can convolute our measurement. These programs are designed to support those in poverty and often help individuals rise above the threshold on paper to the point where they would incorrectly be labeled as not in poverty, which blurs the lines of poverty classification. Additionally, our income level will account for geographic variation, recognizing that living expenses can differ significantly. And we will also adopt the SPM's perspective on shared resources to consider various family sizes and shared incomes. It is important to note that income is seen as a means to an end, not the end itself. We believe that income serves as a tool for achieving capabilities and translating them into functions, such as education or healthcare. Evaluating income from a capabilities perspective also allows us to assess one's quality of life. This approach considers not just the amount of income someone earns, but also the means by which they generate that income. For example, if an individual works 20 hours a day and earns enough to surpass a certain threshold, they would experience limited capabilities and a decreased quality of life. It is important to evaluate whether individuals have their basic needs met, seen through FCSU. We want to focus on whether these needs are actually fulfilled rather than simply determining if an individual has the income to hypothetically meet them. This approach recognizes that other expenses, such as medical costs or transportation to work, can take priority over basic needs, potentially leaving individuals without sufficient funds to fulfill them. When considering this from a capabilities perspective, it is essential to assess whether access to FCSU is sufficient for an individual to live a dignified life. We believe that while having these basic needs fulfilled allows for a minimally decent life, it does not necessarily guarantee a dignified one. Health is important to look at as it significantly influences an individual's ability to function and pursue opportunities beyond just their physical state of being. By using health as an indirect measure of capabilities, we can assess many of those from Nussbaum's list. In our measurement, we will examine an individual's nutrition and consider their mental health, as we believe it plays a vital role in determining one's ability to function and thrive in society. We also want to factor education into our measurement as a key aspect of capabilities and functionings. Specifically, years of schooling serves as an excellent metric for identifying the opportunities available to someone later in life as well as their current conditions. While we acknowledge that there is no succinct way to measure capabilities, we believe that poverty itself should be defined and measured with these considerations in mind, so an individual can pursue a quality of life that honors dignity, as set forth in our definition of poverty. This holistic perspective aims to establish a measurement framework that accounts for an individual's capabilities, allowing us to understand not just what someone has, but what they can do with these things. For our poverty threshold, we propose a checklist that takes into account various individual circumstances and different aspects of poverty, all while keeping capabilities in mind. The first item on our checklist is income. We will establish an income threshold of less than 50% of the median household income. The next line item is basic needs. Our focus is on whether individuals actually have these needs met to live a minimally decent life, which is the bare minimum. Education will evaluate whether an individual has completed less than 12 years of schooling, or in other words, obtained their high school diploma. Graduating from high school significantly lowers the likelihood of becoming impoverished due to the capabilities it provides. Health will be assessed in two parts, one for nutrition and one for mental health. In this checklist, we have placed a heavier weight on income and basic needs, as we believe these are the most impactful resources influencing an individual's quality of life and dignity. With a total possible score of 9 points, the threshold for poverty will be set at scores of 5 or higher. We believe this approach will effectively account for both the resources people have and their capabilities. While this is our suggestion of how to measure poverty, we understand that it falls under a national scale and that not every individual who falls above our poverty line can or should be considered to be out of poverty. There is no succinct way to cover everyone's circumstances and situation under a national standard, as poverty must be viewed as an individual issue. However, we believe our combination of OPM, SPM, and capabilities framework does take us one step closer to this viewpoint while expanding the measurement of poverty to cover individual situations as much as possible.